Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Animal Crackers. This movie is kind of one of those where it was a story for a long time, and now it's finally released, and now we're supposed to, care and stuff. And I don't know if I do, to be honest with you. Reading through the whole history of it, through a Variety article, which I think is recent. It's kind of not the most notable history. I know a lot of people say Harvey Weinstein was involved. Apparently he sort of just looked at it and went, eh. The only one that got sort of close was Entertainment Studios, who did put out Arctic Dogs, but didn't put out this. This is not worse than Arctic Dogs. And it's not so bad that I understand why all those studios passed. I'm assuming because of the massive amounts of debts that accrued from the production of this, which the director got sued over, and Relativity Media, whatever, was involved, and there was lawsuits and all these things, and it kind of got dragged out, and it got released in China, but not in America. And supposedly, we talked about it on a pizza party once, which I totally, completely forgot, and when I searched it, I couldn't find it. So, I think ultimately, the biggest thing with this movie is I sort of get that it could have some promise. And it's directed by two people, Scott Christian Sava, who I'm not familiar with, doesn't have huge credits, hasn't really directed something before. It sounds like he's going to try to direct another animated movie after this. And then Tony Bancroft, who's one of the directors of the original animated Mulan, and did other stuff at Disney, but that's his other directed animated film, major directed animated film that you would know. And the guy, Scott Christian Sava, created this from a graphic novel when he saw his kids were playing with animal crackers, and every time they ate an animal cracker, they would pretend they would become an animal. And he's like, that's a great idea for a movie or a comic or something. And then he, instead of making about his sons turning into animals, which that actually sounds way better than this movie, he decided to make the plot of this movie. Which, here's the thing, and I totally get why studios passed on this, is because this isn't a bad movie. It's actually a lot better. It surprised me, to be honest with you. You get the idea that this guy, Owen, loves the circus, and his uncle ran a circus, or his whole family, Horatio, Bob and Horatio, who are brothers, the Huntington brothers, ran the circus, and there's a whole backstory of that, which this movie has a lot of backstory, which I think is sort of part of the issue. But then Owen falls in love with his wife, Zoe, or is it Zoe? Whatever. But he meets her, and they fall in love over their love of the circus and all this stuff. And at first you think this is going to be a movie about a guy who gets circus. Cool. That sounds like, we bought a zoo, but it said they just get a circus. Oh, okay. And then it's you start this beginning part, and it's like, how cool is the circus? They fell in love with the circus. We're really selling the circus aspect, just the circus part. And then after that, they go, oh yeah, and there's this box of animal crackers or whatever, which I was like, hold up, what's going on? Animal crackers. Well, that's the name of this movie. Man, this might be important. So the fact that they have to set up this whole, I don't know, I thought this was one graphic novel. I didn't look up. This looks like you crammed 100 issues of a comic into this nonsense. But basically, you learn, because this one guy burns down the one circus, and they're in trouble, and then him and his wife are like, oh, maybe we should take the circus. Oh, but that's the other thing. So he could have just taken on this circus life, but he chose not to because his wife's father was like, she can't marry a circus bum. She's got to marry a respectable guy at my company. And he's like, oh, cool. All right, so I'll have a rich job at your company where you'll make me respectable, because that was a major plot point in this movie. And then he goes, right, even though I just said that and made a point of it to change your entire life, you're basically just going to eat dog biscuits, which, again, doesn't make sense. And that's kind of a problem with this movie, is it brings up a point, and then it goes yeah, but maybe this would be funny to someone. Not in a cool random Zucker Brothers kind of funny way, more in a hey, we didn't think this out very well. This looks like a script that someone looks at, and you then go, okay, there needs to be a huge amount of clarification, a huge amount of paring things down. This looks like the script you got to a certain point, and then you had a really good screenwriter completely flesh out and make sense. That never happened, clearly, because this is not a really great screenplay. And there's just certain things that they overemphasize, they underemphasize, they have all this back. It feels like every idea that probably could have just stayed in a notebook got put in this movie. It makes it way too dense than like a movie called Animal Crackers really needs to be. But yeah, so you get like this whole backstory. You learn that he was trying to be respectable, but then clearly that doesn't work out very quickly. He should have gone like, oh shit, this guy lied to me and clearly just wants to shit on me my entire life. Why don't I go back to the circus? And that's the other thing, was like, so then like they go and like his uncle supposedly dies, even though you kind of already know it's like, I could have called out what happened to his uncle when they explain the whole logistics of the animal. See, that's another thing. To explain this movie, I have to talk for a long time and explain all of this, which is another big issue. It's not like with Mulan, it's like the director's previous thing was like, oh, there's this girl and you know, they wouldn't let girls fight in the army, and they were going to send her dad, so she pretended to be a guy, and she went off. And you're like, oh, cool, that sounds neat. Animal Crackers are like, all right, so in the 1960s, there was a circus, and there were these two brothers, and one of them picked this girl, and then the other one didn't, and he super didn't get over it, even though supposedly he could have had lots of ladies, but he decides to get super obsessed with this girl. And then this other couple, a guy who met the girl, this is not an exaggeration, the one guy who met the girl, his nephew, who is more related to him or something, I don't know, and the nephew meets a girl at the circus, and then we follow him, and you're like, what about the other ones? Doesn't matter. There was a fire at that circus or something, and then they show up to the wake, and then there's a fight at the wake, and you're like, you've lost me completely. And that is this movie. It's just like too much going on. Now, there's certain promises in it, and I sort of get why people thought this could be something. But when they finally get to the animal crackers, you learn that's when they take out an animal cracker, you eat a cracker, you turn into an animal, and then there's a human cookie that magically appears, or cracker, whatever. This is, by the way, not sponsored by Animal Crackers. This is not like their Lego movie, Playmobil movie for Animal Crackers. He was inspired by Animal Crackers. They haven't made a statement on this movie, but it's not like Animal Crackers branded the movie. It's just like, I'm not sure how they worked out the legality of that, and I don't care. You have this thing, and then you have to find the human cracker, and obviously that puts up a whole, like, you know, plot things, or like, I have to get that back, or I lost it, or And that's the thing. It's like, you kind of needed to pick one of these things. The circus thing, or the animal cracker thing. And you don't pick both and have them going on at the same time. And that's this movie's biggest issue. Because I don't think either are bad movies, but there's just too much going on. And I didn't even bring up this whole thing about making this magical dog biscuits that actually taste like food, because dogs like human food, and they thought this was a good idea or something. And that's like a plot point you do at the beginning of the movie, and then you forget that plot point, and then when you watch it the second time, you're like, that was a weird plot, I totally forgot about that. But no, they're not like a good movie that would do that. They're like Animal Crackers, so that plot point keeps going. And the whole thing with him, like, his wife takes on the circus and not him after a certain point. Like, he's like, I gotta keep this job eating dog biscuits, which there's no way that pays for that house they have in this movie. So that, like, didn't make any sense. It was like, are you guys having financial difficulties? Like, are you set up because she has a good executive job and you just literally eat dog biscuits all day? Like, I can't imagine you're making more than her. If that is true, holy shit, like, wow, patriarchy, guys. But most likely, there's no fucking way he makes more than her. If she's like, yo, I'm not doing this anymore, I don't know what are they worried about the cable bill? I don't understand that. Sometimes they explain stuff, sometimes they don't. Like, they get into, like, that the circus had magical animals, but they don't really bring that up until the animal crackers show up. And when they're explaining to you the circus, it's more like, isn't the circus cool? And you see some animals, but you're not, like, focused on that. It would have been nice if the movie really sold that animal aspect, or even introduced the animal crackers. It just, they didn't explain any of this. And there's so much to explain and set up that it's almost like, I don't know how you would have won this magical game of figuring out whatever the fuck this movie was. That's the thing, is like, I can understand why all these studios pass. If someone's like, it's a movie and this guy eats crackers and he turns into animals, you're like, awesome, that sounds like a movie. Also, there's a circus, and the circus is important, and I'm sure Harvey Weinstein fell asleep because he wanted to, like, molest somebody or something. It's not there because there's just too much going on. You kind of see, there's one part where, like, Horatio Circus is gonna leave, and it's like, they're a circus and they're driven by their strongman on a bike, and he sees, like, an impossible hill he has to do, and, like, that stuff is funny. Like, sometimes I'll have a bit and I'm like, okay, I can see some promise in here. And that happens a lot where like I'll see promise in a few scenes and then it reminds me that, oh, we have a circus plot and we have an animal crackers plot. Also, we have a dog biscuit plot. And you're like, oh my God, like you got more plots than they got letters in the alphabet. It's like not that bad. I would actually say it's like better than like the Addams Family animated movie or Arctic Dogs or a lot of stuff. But it just like, it has so much going on. It's just not very clear. This isn't like Armacord by Fellini or something where like you have all this stuff going on. And it's like, you know, the brilliance of a small town. It's just like the screenwriters like wanted to make 3 different movies. And I think one of those was good, not the dog biscuit one, by the way, but the other 2 could have been something, and they were just so determined to have all these plot lines, it just killed it. And it's kind of like one of those movies that in 2 years, I don't think anyone will remember Animal Crackers, because it's just like there's not enough fun in it, there's too much going on. Sure, it had a crazy voice cast from John Krasinski to Emily Blunt to Ian McKellen to Sylvester Stallone barely saying anything to Patrick Warburton to Raven-Symoné, believe it or not. But it just like, other than that, like what's really that interesting about it? And I don't know, like I might show this to my daughter, but it's kind of like not one, like sure, it surprised me. I like kind of the things at the end and I sort of got into it more than I thought I would. But overall, it just like, it's like to sort of explain it takes too long. And I think what I'd honestly do is like, if someone's like, oh, is that good? And I go, yeah, it's all right. And like, what's it about? And I'm like, whatever. It's just too much. It's kind of like its own plot line kills it. And I think that's sort of the thing with this movie. It's like, I sort of think like there's all this talk and there's all this like weight and, you know, like potential that there'd be this like animal cracker movie or whatever. And then when it's all said and done, it's just kind of like a fart in the wind or something. It just like completely goes away without you ever really smelling it. It's sort of like more notable for the build-up than it ever will be for this kind of a movie, because this is just like not really a clear narrative whatsoever. I can see this director and this team like making a good movie if they just simplify everything. The Animal Crackers thing, it's a cool idea. That'd be a really cool short, like watching these kids turn into animals. Like someone could do something cool with it. Not this movie, you know? I mean, it was also cool seeing Danny DeVito playing a ringmaster again after Dumbo. I think he recorded this actually pre when he shot Dumbo maybe, so this is maybe first. But if there's ever an actor who should be typecast as a ringmaster or a clown, he's sort of a clown ringmaster or whatever, or someone who works at a circus is Danny DeVito. I don't know how many other circus things he's been in. I'm sure someone will list some, but I just found Animal Crackers to be sort of like its own worst enemy in terms of plotting and screenplay and story, because that's like honestly just like that's really just what kills this whole thing. I could see like glimmers of hope in it. It really just needed a good screenwriter to just like flesh this thing out and clear it up. It's not really that bad, but it's not really that good. It's just not a very well refined film at all, and that's really its biggest issue. Is it just doesn't really entirely know what it wants to be. You could say it wanted to be a fun kids movie, but in terms of what its plot is really saying, it just needed to pick a lane, and you can't just go for all of them. And maybe it did that well for, you know, for everything going on. It did it better than a lot of films did, and it generally is enjoyable, but I just don't find it to be any kind of like significant sort of animated film. I just find it to be like a messy independent film that really needed more eyes to give more notes on it and really break it down and make it into something that could have been cool, because a bunch of kids turning into animals, that sounds like a great plot. This is frankly just not. So if you have seen Animal Crackers and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.